Now, as you know, we broke the news last night that the Australian newspaper had done some digging, got some information, and that power bills were set to rise and 2030 targets were going to need an awful lot of money behind them. All of this was in a report which was handed to the Climate Change Minister. But my issue, while I share the rage of everyone about the cost of this transition, and it has been my sole focus for the best part of 15 years, which is not to have the debate about do things exist or not exist and how much can Australia do to actually change the weather. Remember, reality is, even if we did everything that the Greens want, it is only 1%. 33% is China, 13% is the United States. Once you put together the third world, Russia, India, 45 minutes of the climate clock are the problem. But there is a very important part of this story that remains really one of the inside stories of how this government is able to pull the wool over people's eyes, the way it is able to operate in darkness. Now, what do they say? There are two things that you don't want to see made. One is a piece of legislation, the other a sausage. Well, the reality is that our system should be one where we can see what a government is considering, we can hear what advice they are getting, we can engage with the people who they are negotiating with, and then, and only then, would a parliament be informed as to whether support or to not support something. But if we can roll that overlay again of the report with all of its redactions, this is the real story that I want to get to. Because yes, the power price stuff is important, but have a look at this document that had to be argued its way into you being able to see it. Line after line after line, just blacked out as if it was some sort of national security. As if on page 42, we really will learn where Harold Holt is. This is a document about climate change. This is a document about power prices. Yet this is how this government works, that they will do everything they can to fight for you to be able to see even a crack in the door to have a look at what is really going on. And they bitch and they moan and they fight and they slow play the ball, and then when eventually you get a document after they've made the decision, after the law has passed, after the bandwagon moves on to another story, only then do you get the document with all of those lines in it. Specifically about this one here. Vast swathes of the document were blacked out, including the entire 24 consecutive pages of a section under the vague title of Other Department Policy Areas. Why couldn't we see that? Under what excuse was that held back from the public? Pages under a section headed Delivering Your Agenda, with the subheadings of Locking in and Accelerating Emissions Reductions and Navigating Global Climate Action and Delivering COP31, were also fully redacted. I repeat, we are not talking here about national secrets. We are talking about their plans about how to deal with 1% of the world's climate crisis. Understandably, the opposition is angry, and rightly so, about this today. This should have been their total focus. Don't get distracted with anything else, but this is what they talked about today.
Chris put on a song and dance today, as he does, trying to cover up what people know across this country.
And Chris Bowen is actually withholding information. He's taking his advice from UN climate czar Simon Steele, who says that eating vegetables and fruit will be a once-in-a-year treat.
Why did this minister do everything he could to hide this document from the Australian public, instead of doing everything he could to reduce power prices by $275?
The way this government treats with contempt anyone who is not the government is a major insight into how things work in Australia. These are bad and dark days, very effective in terms of media management, because what they do is, by keeping information off the table, no one can dare report the downside of what they are planning to do. The first time you hear about it is when the government announces what it's already decided upon. By not seeing the information that is handed to the ministers, you don't know if they've chosen the best, second best, or the fourth worst option. And this is not a one-off. This document that you saw today, as starkly shown for all of those black lines, all of those efforts to keep from you the details of what this government has planned to do or is planning to do into the future, There are plenty of other examples, including, remember when they wanted to introduce a bill to censor the internet? This same government wanted the misinformation bill, where government departments would decide what truth was based off what the government decided to be truth at the time. Every single major piece of legislation, when it is negotiated behind closed doors with lobby groups who have to sign non-disclosure agreements, like the people who were talking about NDIS or a whole bunch of other areas of government policy. Every piece of legislation being discussed and debated behind the scenes comes with a piece of paper. If you want to be in the room to give us your point of view, sign this piece of paper so you can't tell anyone outside the room what we're considering. And then the most recent, and something that I've talked about many times before, and it is the single biggest attack on our democracy as we speak, which is the same person, Michelle Rowland, who wanted to censor the internet, is now in a more powerful position as the Attorney General, wanting to increase the powers that the Labor Party and this government have to deny you information. For the third time, let's roll that overlay again of that report, because what you are seeing, in part, with all of those black lines all through it, are the excuses that a minister is allowed to use because this piece of paper may well have gone somewhere near the federal cabinet. Under the new laws, we would get even less access to even fewer pages of these documents. Again, this is a spectacular media strategy, and a spectacular media strategy leads to a spectacular political outcome. But this is not what an open democracy looks like. This is not how the system is supposed to work. And unsurprisingly, this is not how the system was supposed to work when this bloke wasn't the Prime Minister and was applying for the job the first time around.
The truth is that we're an open, transparent party. There needs to be complete transparency. What we need is a Prime Minister who's prepared to be transparent, a more honest and transparent government going forward. We will make it transparent. We're being transparent.
So over and over and over again, that's the promise.